We need to find a way to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, if we're going to save America.
This is Paige. Welcome to the Necessary Trouble Show. Here's your host, my dad, Russell Fugett.
Thanks, Paige. Welcome back to the Necessary Trouble Show here at the Good Word Digital Studios. Today, I'm so excited to have a wonderful guest, my cousin, Christina Lewis Halpern. Christina wears so many hats. She's been a reporter. More recently, she is the founder of All-Star Code, which is recognized as Obama Champion of Change for the work they've done to help increase the number of men of color, Black and brown young men of color in the technology space. And now, more recently, she has moved on to be the founder of Blck, which is a database of Black founded nonprofits, which you can find at GiveBLCK, correct? .org.
That's right.
Without further ado, go for it, Christina Lewis Halpern.
Oh, hi, Russell, and hi,
Hello.
Necessary Trouble Show listeners. This is so fun for me for so many reasons. First, this is the first time that I've been interviewed, because I've done a lot of interviews, but first time by a family member.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
I thought Uncle Elliot would have beat me to it or something.
No, at least not on your own show. But no, I don't think so. Uncle Elliot's the one with the pictures.
True.
So this is really fun, especially because I just love, and I've told you this, Russell, I love what you've done in taking your business and entrepreneurship desires, which you've had for a long time, but then also melding them with your activism, your love with social justice. Yeah, of course, your love of God, which you have, right behind you. And I just love how you're, also you're an amazing dad and family man, and now you're, just sort of exploding in this. So it's really great to be on this show, and talking about like social justice work.
We can end the show. We can end the episode right there. I'm a quick one on the head. Well, thank you for so much love and all your encouragement and support over the years. And I want to start today. You wrote a piece in Shape magazine, and I hadn't really, there's been so much to process given the election, and of course the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris being both the a mini first, as your article described.
So many firsts, yeah.
African American, but similar to you, African American and Asian heritage. You've shared a very unique perspective. Tell us a little bit about that article and what the election of Kamala Harris as vice president means to you in that regard.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, Kamala, yes. This. And when I was asked to write the piece, which was really just, I was asked just 4 days before election day to write it, and it would only have won if she ran. And yes, I realized that, wow, this is historic, that she's the first Black woman, but first Asian woman, first Black and Asian woman, first woman, really on to be elected to office. And we haven't even talked about it. So the piece was a response to all of these firsts, and I was privileged to be able to share what it felt like to see yourself really be seen. Now, and I said it means nothing in a way, right? Because just because there's a Black woman vice president doesn't mean that that the Black woman's wage gap, which Black women make 63 cents on the dollar of white men, or the incidence of the higher maternal death rate, that Black women, and Black babies, face. It's not going to change all of those things, right? But it does change everything, because it changes what we talk about in the conversation, what people think is possible, here, for Black people, but for white people, for Asian people, for Americans, but for around the globe. It just changes the whole narrative. And as people learn about her and her story, and that she has a Jamaican father who's a professor now, right. Who's a Stanford professor, that she has South Asian and Indian mother and Indian relatives, and that she's a part of both. So me being Black and Asian, as you know, my dad was Black, but my mom is Filipina, right? And she, after my dad died when I was 12, really raised me. So I've always been in two worlds. And so being Black and Asian, like she is, and seeing how the Asian and the world community was responding to her was really, really powerful for me. And then, of course, there's the fact that she's a woman, which also just is, it's just hugely resonating personally. I talked about her husband, whose first name I don't remember, Emhoff, and how he's just comfortable, being her spouse on the public stage. I mean, he has a great career. He's certainly very successful, but in the public eye, he's Mr. Kamala Harris. And so it's just a great thing, I think, for new couples and families today, two working couples, working parents, working families. It's just a really great thing.
Now I have to admit, shout out my cousin Dan, your husband. I can't wait for you to make that analogy as well. Because I feel like around our boisterous, crazy family, I feel like Dan has done such a great job of being able to fit in the similar way that Mr. Imhoff was able to fit in as the first, second dude or gentleman or whatever he's going to be called. So I thought that was an interesting parallel.
Sure, and that guy Douglas Emhoff. He's the first the first Jewish spouse, at the top of their highest office. And so, Dan, we have that in common too, which is pretty funny. So, this world where people are, instead of like being divided, instead of being half Black and half Asian, the idea of being both. I am Black, but I am also Asian, and and Kamala is really showing that, is really doing that. I feel, and that's exciting, and it's exciting also for people like me who are in the marriage with two religions, and just, it's just, I think it just contributes to, to a new world and the possibility that things can be different, which, post, I think you just told me that this podcast is about being, it's kind of your response to the murder of George Floyd, and to the Black Lives Matter movement. And myself also, I really have been, I feel, changed by that conversation, and empowered. And that's the other reason I'm excited to be on with you, is to help encourage others to take that leap and move from just having, my private thoughts, and feelings, and sort of acting on them by being successful. I think that has been a big thing, we were raised in, like, let's be a credit to the race, and just, just by being you and having good grades and looking smart and clean, that's what you need to do for Black people, right? Because that's what we need to do, kind of this politics of respectability aspect. But I really feel that, that's over. Like, I don't, honestly, I mean, not to go on people, but that's just not enough anymore. If you're just doing that now, like with class being the way it is, like, just because you're Black doesn't mean you're not part of the bourgeoisie, right? Like, just because you're Black doesn't necessarily make you anti-racist. And so if you're not, of course, to the extent, not everyone has to be like all over Instagram, right? It's not about but about like what you support and where you spend your free time. If it's all just about you're spending all your time just on you, and like my vacations and my work and advancing my success and helping my family and helping my friends, and not thinking about like, the culture and the world bigger than you, and like, heck, climate change is a huge problem for for Black people, but for the world, I just don't think it's enough. So another reason I'm really happy to be vibing on this with you. Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. And again, that's what this platform is about. It's really about the idea of generosity. So of course, I start with my network. I've had your Uncle Gene, my father, already on, and I'm going to probably have my brother-in-law Adam on soon. And so of course, I'm going to have family, and I've had like 7 GW alumni on, right? Crystal, who's here listening to us, our producer, Crystal Warner. So of course I've drawn from that, but we've also been able to find guests like Rick Hart, who we didn't know, and be able to explore and expand the platform to make a space for other voices to be out there and available and document this moment in time and to begin to elevate those voices, particularly those younger, even Gen Z voices now that are stepping into the sphere and activism and made so much impact on the ground during this most recent election. Now I'm going to pivot the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Gen Z is here.
They're amazing.
They are.
They're still activists.
Yeah. I have a niece who I'm very proud of, who is extremely sophomore in college and is extremely activist. And it's just fascinating to kind of observe it more or less from a distance and kind of see how that plays out on social media, but also in her day to day from what I grasp of it when I connect with her. And it's just fascinating to see the difference, even from some of the older millennials that I guess you and I would be considered on the older end of the millennial spectrum. So, but 2020 for you, I mean, you of course you had baby Marcy, and I look like she's getting big. Macy, I'm sorry. See, I can't wait to finally be able to meet her.
The New York Times got it wrong too. So
okay, maybe that's where I was gonna say. I was gonna say I read the article. So it's probably still buried back there. Having 2020 seems to be so interesting to you. Having a baby and then pivoting from All Star Code to Give Blck. I mean, tell us a little bit about this summer and how you arrived at Give Blck, really.
Sure. Well, this summer, I founded All Star Code, which is an initiative to teach computer science to Black and Latino boys. I founded that 8 years ago and had been slowly transitioning out into to a new executive director who's now running things, and I'm on the board. So I was due with a baby in March, right? And so I was on maternity leave, and yes, I'm also a COVID mom, which was insane. But yeah, so I was 3 months into my maternity leave when George Floyd was murdered and Ahmaud Arbery first, and I was so it's like everyone just feeling a lot of things, and that moment just crystallized for me that what I already knew, that brought me to be more forward and advocating for these things more publicly. But what then really struck me was the groundswell movement and how many non-Black people also started supporting Black Lives Matter and actually taking action to support Black people. And that really, really moved me. And I became involved with a group of moms. Not all white, but mostly white moms out in East Hampton on Long Island's East End. And we organized together. They really, did it, organized a Black Lives Matter march, on the East End. I think it's honestly one of the first, maybe the first protest march that the Hamptons has ever seen, like in its, in its history. And it got me thinking about the nonprofit space because $450 billion is given away every year by Americans, but only a tiny fraction goes to Black nonprofit organizations. And so just like in the business world, and there's this Buy Black movement that's amazing, but in the charitable world also, there's this prevalence of a systemic racism that prevents Black nonprofits from also getting the funds they need to really do good work. And I said, let's try to do something to change that. And I put together just a spreadsheet. The idea would it would list, all the Black nonprofits that I could find. And I started with Black founded ones. Anyway, this thing got so much traction. All these people came and said, hey, we'll help you build this, we'll help you grow it, we'll partner with you. And I found some co-founders, and lo and behold, we now have Give Blck, a comprehensive web database that you can find at giveblack.org, whose goal is to list every Black nonprofit organization. We launched with an article in the New York Times in September. It's spelled Give Blck, BLCK. The missing A is for the missing assets. The assets that, were,
I love it.
That were stolen from the Black community or that the Black community was never able to really, to really develop. And we all know about Black Wall Street in Tulsa. So that's
access. A for access too.
Yes, also A for access. It's what's missing and what we can fill. And that has been really powerful. It's the first kind of infrastructure nonprofit that is Black led for the charitable giving space, and it's about data. So it's a really exciting. It is a nonprofit. It's an exciting product that we're building now, and that's been fun. But that is So I'm the chair of that board, and will be, and we're growing that. I have these amazing co-founders, Stephanie and Dave, that I'm working on that with. But it's a way to help support the entire space of Black-led organizations. Then in my other life, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I'm talking with some different people. A lot's happening. I technically only got back from maternity leave in September, and I was planning to take even a whole year off. But so I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm open to suggestions.
Okay. Well, I know we'll have to talk more about that because I have a few things kind of humming along. But yeah, I think 2021, I'm still almost like a wait and see. And you hear the vaccine news. Okay, well maybe I could plan next summer or next spring to do some things beyond what we've been doing for the last I guess 9 months now. One question I want to ask you that's always fascinating to speak about it when we do, and that's about your father, my uncle, the late Reginald F Lewis, and I have his book here. For those of you who don't know, his book was recently released on Audible, and for what I saw, at least the first few weeks, it did quite well. Correct in the category, it did really well. So
yeah.
I know for me, like as we get older, like my perspective on who he was and the impact it's had on my life and our family and the world shifts. And in the context of Give Black and in this year, like in the audio book coming out and kind of giving the story and his life another run, if you will, at a high level. What does this year meant as you reflect on him in this context of 2020?
Oh wow! Well, here is the Audible, and if you can see that there.
Yeah, we can see it.
But I do
download it, buy it, listen.
Yes, please download it and listen. Especially for new people, there is also I wrote a new foreword to this book that you won't see in the printed editions, and it sort of summarizes what happened since the book was published 25 years ago this month, actually, and it's that it met this really almost fanatic fan base, of people of all races and genders. Now, that like some of the core ones were Black men who really spoke to them, not just as an inspiring story, but also as a manual. And so Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun is a book that people, they keep, and they'll read it every year, as they start businesses. So these fans went out and actually went into careers in finance, became lawyers, started businesses, many of them extremely, extremely successful. Robert F. Smith, widely recognized as the richest Black man in America, used to joke that he didn't need to write a story, his own autobiography, because Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun was his story. And, my dad was a role model for him. And so I think when you look at legacy today and you think about George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, my dad's story, it's sometimes talked about as, well, he made a lot of money, which, of course he did, right? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a lot of money, especially when you come from a place where there is no money. Money is power. Money is assets. Of course, you want money if you don't have any, and you want that for your family. But it's not what makes my dad great, and it's not what leads to greatness. Greatness comes from what you leave behind. From what happens when you leave the room. When you leave this earth, and what people and what you've inspired other people to do. So I hope that with the Audible book, and as the legacy becomes more obvious, I think that's what everyone should be thinking about who's out there grinding, looking at that next rung on the ladder, looking at that house, that dress, that thing that they want to buy, that they want to acquire, etc. And again, of course, great. Like, yes, live the good life, sure, but it's not enough. And it's not going to make you happy if you aren't also thinking about what you're contributing to the community, what you're contributing to other people. And I think that anyone who really knew him personally saw that with him. But sometimes people who just know the persona, it's not as apparent to them. That in fact was part of the reason that he was that people trusted him that he was able to be so successful because, even very young, he was always thinking about how to help people, and he did help people. He was an advisor to tons of people. Ken Chenault, who, a documentary came out about my dad that you can find at rfl.film, RFL for Reginald F Lewis .film, FILM, gave this wonderful interview in the documentary. In fact, he made this point about that's really the sign of legacy of what comes later. And I asked him, and I said, "Oh, well, how did you come to be, such a fan and everything?" He said, "Oh, I knew your dad. He helped me. Like
Wow.
he advised me." Right. Now, I don't know the exact ages, but Ken wasn't my dad died 27 years ago, right? Like Ken was very early in his career, right? But he did go to Harvard Law School. Every year after my dad graduated from Harvard Law School, he would go back and visit with the newly created Black Students Association, which he helped create. Because, again, before he was there weren't really enough Black students to have any kind of association. And he would come back, right? Like just on his own, before this was a thing. Like this was not a thing. Like Black student associations, they did not exist at his time.
Wow.
That process of reunions, but he had the foresight to understand that this was important. So like Barack Obama met my dad, right? Because they both went to Harvard Law School, and my dad had been coming back there, every year. Literally, like every Black person who went to Harvard Law School, like probably had the opportunity to shake my dad's hand, and likely did, because as his star progressed. But he did that. He didn't start doing that at like 45, when he was all famous and it was part of his branding. No, always from the very beginning, because he had advice to share, and and he gave it. So yeah, I was shocked about that.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know that. So that's just amazing story and anecdote. I think just to quickly answer the question for myself, for me, it's been about keep going no matter what. And I was at a consulting firm for 9 months that had to reduce half its staff and got let go in the middle of June, right after George Floyd. And kind of had some time, and company was very generous. So I kind of knew it was coming and had time to process and prepare. And really, the birth of this show really kind of began in that season of what am I going to do next, and how can I and my business and my activism show up in this moment? And that really was the genesis of Necessary Trouble. So really, it's been about to keep going no matter what. And how do I, even in this spirit in between the politics and COVID of fear and being inside, how do you maintain a spirit of generosity to make something that other people can be a part of? And so in that way, in that spirit of your dad and my uncle, this is where we are, where I am today is on this show. So it's great to have you today, Christina. I love you dearly, and thanks for bringing it all so full circle for me and for everybody watching and listening today.
Oh, you're so welcome, Russell. And by the way, your dad is the greatest. Everyone, Gene Fugett just has such an amazing heart, and story of persistence. And he is just a really wonderful, kind person, and a great dad, and it shows in you and, and your brother and sister. He's just really, really great. And your mom too, obviously. But
thank you. That's why
he was my dad's best friend.
Yeah, little big brother, right? He was a little big brother. No, the great pictures in the book. Yeah, I love the Uncle James you shared on Veterans Day about his service. I'd forgotten about Uncle James and his service in the Korean War, and so that was a great find as well. So, Christina Lewis Halpern, my cousin, the founder of Give Black. Please check out her article in Shape magazine online about her thoughts as a Black Asian woman in the election of Kamala Harris as our Vice President-elect. Christina, thanks so much for being a guest today on Necessary Trouble.
Thanks for watching the Necessary Trouble Show. Please visit necessarytroubleshow.com to support the show and to learn more. Subscribe to our e-newsletter and podcast, and follow us on social media at Necessary Trouble Show.
Good job, Daddy. This is Paige. Thanks for watching.